Hello and welcome back to Dry Conversations. I'm your host, Whitney Cowell. Joining me today is an old friend of mine, Mike Foxhall. Hey, Mike.
Hey, Whitney, how are you?
I'm great. I'm so glad to catch up with you. We actually didn't do too much of that in the pre-show. And I haven't seen you in like 15, 20 years. So
Yeah, from back in the day at Montgomery Academy.
yeah, a long time ago, back when I was in like middle school, high school. So I would love to know, just first of all, and for anybody that doesn't know you, a little bit about who you are and what you've been up to recently.
Yeah, so my name's Mike Foxhall. I live in Birmingham, Alabama. I work as a realtor. And, I've been sober. I just celebrated 3 years sober. And so that was a big milestone for me. And it's been a long journey. I started my first attempt to get sober was in 2020, and had some ups and downs, and I think that's pretty common for a lot of people that come into recovery and are in the rooms that it doesn't quite stick on the first try.
Yeah.
But for me, I learned a lot, and I built a really great foundation in that first attempt that really allowed me to have some success at this go round.
Yeah. So 2020 was a hard year, I think, for anybody trying to get sober. But what happened that made you make the decision and say, this is the time? I'm ready to take this step.
Yeah, so I actually beat the pandemic by about a month and a half.
There you
I
go.
was in treatment. When I went to treatment January 31st of 2020.
Okay.
Um, it was 4 days before my 30th birthday. Um, and At that point, I was married. I've got two kids. And we were living back in Montgomery, where you and I grew up. And I was a third-year law student at Faulkner at the Jones School of Law at Faulkner
Mhm.
University in Montgomery. And at that point in my life, I'll give a little background on me. Grew up in a pretty privileged environment. My dad was a doctor, my mom was a nurse. I went to a little bitty private school in Montgomery, and I was taught at, and I'm not sure if this was your experience or not. I've learned in recovery that everybody had different experiences.
Yeah.
And I know for me, growing up in that environment, like there were some things that I learned that had to be unlearned.
Yeah.
That like money was going to make me happy. That success was something that I was going to get because of who I was, not because of how hard I worked. And that, and I've there's a lot of people that we grew up with that are highly successful today that probably didn't learn those lessons, but that was my perception of it. And so I was always looking for that way to succeed, always looking for that way to get ahead, that way to be successful, to provide, to be able to live this lifestyle that I had grown up glorifying.
Yeah.
And we, growing up in Montgomery, we grew up around a lot of politicians, a lot of people who worked in state government, with Montgomery being the capital. And while I was in law school, I got involved with state politics, and was doing a little bit of campaign consulting, helping. I was a full-time law student, but also helping with grassroots efforts, volunteer organization, coordination and training, for political campaigns around the state. And so I was going. My grades in law school were very up and down. I was taking a lot of Valium. I was drinking pretty heavily at the time.
Right.
Um, really just trying to project this lifestyle that I perceived as successful.
Yeah.
And, then had an opportunity to get into the government affairs side of things, lobbying. I got an internship with a lobbyist in Montgomery, and got some exposure to that world. Worked with him for a legislative session and a special session in the Alabama legislature. And it was so cool, but I got so drunk on proximity to power.
Yeah.
That
Absolutely.
was, oh, it was, and I worked with somebody relatively connected, and got to see some really behind the scenes stuff.
Mhm.
And it was very, very intoxicating for me. And not to mention the fact that during the legislative session, you're having receptions held by different professional associations and organizations throughout the session. And so every night, there's booze flowing, and it's not your well level. It's top shelf.
Yep.
It's the good stuff. It's the stuff you want to drink. Um,
That was when I was doing campaigns, I would go to the fundraising events and taste test everything first to make sure it was up to par.
you got to.
So,
You've got
but
to
that
do a
was my
taste
job.
test.
Like I was paid to do that. So I get it, and that the proximity to power really can, especially in the environment that we were raised in. Success had a very specific box that you were supposed to
Exactly.
strive to be in, and for some of us, that addictive personality wasn't just like I had my first drink and then my life was over, and then I found myself, on the side of the road with a needle hanging out of my arm, which is a lot of people's story. But for some of us, like that behavior and that personality comes out in a lot of different ways. And then it leads to more things that make us feel different, things that make us feel.
Oh, absolutely. And for me, and it's not just proximity to power, like I'll wrap my entire identity up in a woman so fast.
Sure.
And we'll get to that in my story a little later on. But you know, I I was Mimi's husband. That's who I was. That was my identity. And I was a political operative. I was a law student. Like all of these things were who I was.
Right.
And so, the internship ends, and so I'm not quite getting that taste that I needed anymore. And so, I start spending a lot more time at the library during the semester. And my time at the library was time on a bar stool at Bud's on
Right.
Fairview Avenue in Montgomery, because that's where the lobbyists hung out. And
The
I wanted to
diverse.
be close to them. And so I was doing that, and I was studying some. I had a buddy who he had I was I'm 30 years old, he's 25 and had just graduated from Alabama. And so I liked hanging out with him a lot because he made me feel young. And one day we finished studying, and he pulls out my old friend. He pulls out that bag of cocaine.
Yep.
And he pulled out a gram, and he said, "Do you want to blow down?" And I was like, I looked at the gram, and I looked at him, and I looked back at the gram, and I said, "Is that all for me?" And he said, "No, we're going to split it." And I said, "That's not how I do blow. You need to call your guy and get an 8 ball."
Wow. Yep.
And so, I mean, and it wasn't we're off. We went through that pretty quickly. And it started, once a week, and then a couple times a week, and
Yep.
then every day,
Yep.
and then by myself. And we get to the point where, he tells me he's got some, so I go over there and do his with an entire bag in my pocket. But do not let him know I've got that, because I'm going to do
No.
that by myself later.
Yeah. Stealing from people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it's it got bad quickly from there. Within a few months, everything had funny fact. During this time, I take my law school finals for the semester, and I actually make a 3.5 GPA. Not sure how I pulled that one off, but did really well academically. And but just on the inside and in every other aspect of my life, everything was falling apart.
Yeah.
I was short with my family. I did pretty much everything I could to avoid my family.
Was
I
there
went
feeling ashamed by it yet at that point?
ashamed of what I was doing, ashamed that I needed to avoid my family. Um,
Was
you
there a part
know,
of you that was like irritated that being around them encroached on your time with your addiction?
so really what it was I got married when I was 23 years old. We had our first kid when we were 25, and I felt like I was robbed of my early 20s.
Yeah.
And I was reliving it then. That's really what it was, because I saw my friends who didn't get married early and who didn't start having families early, all the fun they got to have, and that they got to build their careers before they started their families. And when I had my first child, we had to move into my in-laws' house because we were broke as shit.
Yeah.
And we lived there for 2 months to get on our feet. And it was, I felt robbed is what it was. And realizing, and going through my first fourth step, realizing that I had resentment towards my wife and my kids for that.
Yeah. It's really hard to
Um,
realize that you resent a child.
but the beauty of this program, and like, thank God for sponsorship and my sponsor, but like, that's a human reaction,
Yeah.
you
Absolutely.
know, and it's okay to feel those things.
Yeah.
Um, and really having that acceptance with myself, and it's, as much as I love the program and sponsorship, the therapy really helps a lot.
Yeah. Oh
I had
gosh. I say it took a team to get me sober. I had more than one therapist.
I have so I have had since April of 2020, I have had the same therapist. And since January 31st, my first day of rehab, I have had the same psychiatrist.
Yep.
He left the treatment center I went to and went into private practice a couple months after I left treatment. And so I have been with him for over 5 years. And honestly, it's a big reason why I'll never leave Birmingham. Is my mental health team is here, and I worked too hard to build that to start over somewhere else.
Yeah. So what's something that you've gained through your recovery journey um, that has brought color back into life again? Because I know, like you said, you've had some ups and downs. And my favorite part about relapse is that you're not starting over because you don't lose all the things that you learned to start with. So I'm curious, in this journey that you've had, what's something that you've gained back again?
So, my initial answer there is hobbies.
Yeah,
Um,
it's a big one.
I had no hobbies when I was using. I didn't have room for anything else in my life.
Yeah.
And that was a struggle in early sobriety this time. It was like Ricky Bobby getting interviewed. It's like, what do I do with my hands?
Right.
Like, I literally can't do anything I used to do. And so for me, I was encouraged, what is something you've always wanted to do? And I've always wanted to be able to play the guitar. And growing up, I tried to take lessons, but like quickly realized that I wanted to play the guitar. I did not want to learn to play the guitar.
Yeah.
And this time it was, I've got a sponsor who's really big on discipline. He's really big on being intentional with your time and your efforts. Um, and I felt like learning to play the guitar and having that project that is never going to be finished, that I'm always going to be able to sit down. If I'm ever feeling squirrely, I'll always have something to do with my hands.
Right.
It is a creative outlet, and that's something that I've gained that I didn't realize I needed, is a
Yeah.
creative outlet. And having a way to be creative and to allow my mind to expand without judgment.
Yeah.
And so I bought an acoustic guitar and I signed up for lessons.
Was this before
And
or after the relapse? When did you start
so
like
this is post relapse.
okay.
So okay, let's back up. Let's get before the relapse. So before the relapse, when I got to treatment, I made a decision that was heavily discouraged by everyone around me. But it's a common one that's made in early recovery. I decided I was in love with a girl that I was in treatment
Oh,
with,
yeah.
and that I did not need to be married to my wife, and that I needed to completely blow up my life, because they said the only thing you have to change is everything, and that includes her. And so, but I was also in a place where I was really lonely, and I had been for a long time. And I think that honestly, my marriage had probably been over for a long time without us realizing it.
Yeah. That's hard.
Um, and it's, and when you've known this person and they've been in your life since you were 18 years old, this is my college sweetheart. And it was like we had the dream, married the college sweetheart, had kids early, get to retire early, we were the couple that gets to be married 60 years.
Yeah.
And it was hard to let that go, especially when a lot of my judgment was clouded by drinking and using.
Yeah.
But it was one of those things that I saw this girl literally across the detox floor. We were both detoxing. And
A
it
tale as
was,
old as time, Mike.
it really is. It really is. And if it, and I mean, I know it sounds corny, but like time stood still. And it was like, I'm in love with this person. And like, I call it a rehab romance, but like, I don't want to cheapen that relationship, because she became an extremely important person in my life. And so we are in love, in rehab, and this is where I was talking about, like, I can get wrapped up in a woman really quickly.
Yeah.
It happened in college. I stopped hanging out with a lot of my friends. I became Mimi's boyfriend. I became Mimi's, husband eventually. Her friends, boyfriends, and husbands were my friends. I didn't really have my own friends anymore. And so this girl became this huge part of my life, almost instantly. And then we both get to sober living in Birmingham, and we end up with the same therapist. And this therapist isn't stupid. And so she puts two and two together and
Sure.
realizes that we're talking about each other in our sessions. And she insists that it stop for a while. And so we agree to do that. And then, I mean, God has a sense of humor, because so in Birmingham, a lot of people in the sober community work as freight brokers, and so we both get jobs at the same freight brokerage, and we are in the same little starting class of 6, and we see each other and talk every single day.
Sure.
and she started dating somebody
Yikes. I bet that
that's
hurt.
not me.
And then those obsessive
And
thoughts start coming back in.
well, and it's you know, and it was really crushing to sit there and hear her talk about her boyfriend every day.
Yeah.
When I had given up everything. Um, and it's one of the most painful experiences of my life. But I got through it sober.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think
I,
that's it's so common, those early relationships. And for anybody that doesn't know this, the reason that they say not to is because your thinking is still very obsessive. The addict inside
also,
of you is very alive. And we can attach ourselves instead of like to our alcohol or to our drugs, we attach ourselves to a person. And
oxytocin's one hell of a drug.
yeah, and it becomes so codependent, and it's so like I mean, I did that too. I didn't go to treatment. I probably should have. But that person that I just couldn't quit, that on again, off again, that was the
Yep.
first thing that I went to when I got sober. And it was it and I had said, like, I want to go a year without dating. That's what's recommended. And I just intentionally kept that person within my, line of sight. And then when I moved, I was like, we're going to make this a long distance. It was very painful when that ended because it was I was sober, but I was not emotionally sober. And so having those feelings, but not numbing any of them and directing it
Exactly.
into one person, it was incredibly painful to like peel that Velcro apart and give myself
Absolutely.
space to heal. So the next person, I wasn't Velcro with them. We had an equally yoked side by side relationship.
Yeah. Well, and so Jen, her name was Jen. We we were very close. We stayed very close, even though she was dating somebody. Um, I was the best friend, the
Sure.
tale as old as time, the guy that can't let go, and the girl can't release him, and it is so sick and it's so unhealthy, and I've seen it so many times
Yep.
in myself and in other people. Um, and so eventually she moves back to Atlanta where she had been living before treatment. We drift out of each other's lives. Um, and I no longer have a reason to stay sober.
Yeah. And that's sad.
And I'm still doing the things and I'm still going through the motions of recovery.
Yeah.
Um, but as it says in some recovery literature, suddenly a drink felt like a good idea.
Yep.
And suddenly it was just Coke and Valium that was my problem.
Yeah.
Booze was never the issue. I can drink. What's wrong with having a few beers? And so I decide that I'm going to start drinking again. And so I've moved out of sober living. I'm in an apartment by myself. And I start drinking. And I'm not the alcoholic that burns their life to the ground in 24 hours. It's a long, painful process for me.
Mm.
And it's the emotional bottoms are what I hit.
Yeah.
And so things are going well for a while. For a few months, I'm able to drink when I want to, the amount I want to.
Sure.
I manage some semblance of control. And then I meet a girl who had been in the program for 5 years, and a couple months before I had also decided to start drinking again. And so, Whitney, it was perfect.
Yeah.
We
You
both
found
like to
yourself a new
drink.
drinking buddy, all your addictions in one
We
place.
both like to drink, but we also have, some semblance of these emotional tools that we learned in the program.
Yep.
And so we have the illusion of being healthy and doing this the right way and communicating and doing the things that normal couples are supposed to do. But we're alcoholics and we're drinking.
Yeah.
And ultimately, she tells me one day, about a month in, that she's relapsed on opiates, which was her DOC.
Yeah.
And so, you know, having some recovery tools, I know that I'm not supposed to date someone who just relapsed. I know that's a
In the
no-no.
middle of your own relapse, sure.
In the middle of, but like, I know, like, from my recovery experience, like, you don't date people who just relapse. Like, they need time and space to heal. And so
Right.
I was like, we need to pump the brakes. We need to heal. You know, let's pause. But like, I'm still interested in you. Like, the feelings are still there. I don't want this to go away, but I want you to be healthy.
Yeah.
And a month later, I get a call from a mutual friend of ours. And she and the guy that she had dated right before me were both found dead from a fentanyl overdose.
Oh, God.
And in an instant, it went from drinking because I wanted to and because I enjoyed it to drinking at pain because I had to.
Yeah.
Because when I'm drinking and I have to face life on life's terms, it doesn't matter how many emotional tools I have in the toolbox. If drinking is an option, it's what I'm going to do.
Right.
And so, I mean, I got, I think, 3 or 4 boxes of wine and locked myself in my apartment for 2 days. And never got to a point where I was drinking at work. But as soon as I left work and had to drive 45 minutes in bumper to bumper traffic home, you bet your ass I stopped at the gas station and got the like 7.5, 10% White Claws, and started drinking on the way home. And so it got out of control quickly. And then Jen, the girl from rehab, moved back. And she had had a relapse herself. She was coming off of, she was trying to come off of heroin again, or fentanyl, whatever it was she was getting at the time. And that started about a 6-month cycle, where I'd relapse and then she'd relapse and then I'd relapse and then she'd relapse, until she overdoses, and I'm there and I have to give her CPR, and I can feel her rib cage crack under my hands as I'm, you know, pumping her heart. And she makes it. She proceeds to relapse. I mean, she proceeds to overdose, I think, 4 more times that week. And so, you know, me at 5 days sober drives her to Ocala, Florida to go to treatment. And she's supposed to be there 6 months, long-term treatment, really get the trauma work she needed. And a month later, she calls me, says she's coming back. And within 2 days, she's overdosed twice and does not wake up the last time.
How did that impact your recovery? Like because I mean, we're supposed to get sober for ourselves, and I think you can only take so much of watching people around you die.
Yeah. And so for me, like, that's when I knew that, like, I can't save anybody else.
Yeah.
Because if love could have saved her, she'd be alive right now.
Yeah.
Because I did everything I could. at my own expense.
Right.
Um,
That's such a devastating truth. And that's a devastating truth for the people that love us in our addiction is like no matter how much you I mean, that was the tell for my parents, right? Like no matter how much they loved me and how much they tried to change me
it
and
doesn't
change my
matter.
environment and change like it's not you can't save me. I have
No,
to make that decision to live on my own.
exactly. And I'm 5 days sober. I'm in an outpatient treatment program, and she dies. And now she grew up outside of Fort Worth, and so I've got to go to her funeral. And I drive over to Atlanta to get a flight because that's the direct flight. I stay in a hotel the night before Atlanta, night before the flight in Atlanta. And in Georgia, kratom is legal, which is not legal in Alabama.
Yeah.
And so I get some kratom, and I take kratom, just trying to numb myself because I can't deal with this. And then I wake up the next morning with the firm resolution that I need to do this sober. I cannot numb myself. I don't take any of the kratom on the plane with me to DFW. And I get on that plane and I have this firm resolution. I'm never drinking again. This is it. I'm done. This is what I needed. And before I realize it, before I even know I'm off the airplane, I'm sitting on a bar stool in DFW and I'm draining my second double vodka and soda. And it's that moment described in the book, that pounding on the bar, the how did this happen
Right.
again? Even after this, it happened. And it was that moment of, and I'm sorry to cuss right here, but like, I'm so fucked. And there's nothing I can do about it.
Yeah.
Like,
And I
this is
think
going to happen over and over again until I die.
and it's the realization of the insanity. Like, those moments of clarity can be really scary when you have them, especially in the middle of the addiction itself. Like, that's I mean, thank goodness we have them because I mean, it's a lightning bolt through your body when you have
Well,
those moments.
and, you know, the first step is, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol and that our lives had become unmanageable. And personally, from my own experience, I don't believe there's anything I can do to work the first step. I believe God works the first step on me.
Yeah.
And in that moment, God worked the first step on me because that thought of I'm so fucked and I'm going to do this over and over again until I die was followed by, there's a group of guys at this meeting that I've been trying to go to that have something special.
Mm-hmm.
They have a light, they have a joy to them. And it's not just that they're sober, because I've been around people that are just sober, and a lot of those people are miserable. But
Yep.
these people have something special. And I want that.
Yeah.
And that's the moment I knew, like, I know what to do here. I'm going to these people and I'm going to do whatever they tell me. If they tell me to stand on one foot and rub my belly and pat my head and jump up and down, I'm going to do it.
Right.
If they tell me to work the fourth step this specific way that they've all done it and that has worked for them, but might not be exactly how I've always thought the fourth step was supposed to look. And so, I know better than you do, sponsor.
Sure. Yeah, your best thinking got you real far.
I can't tell you how many times my sponsor has looked at me and been like, I didn't come to you for advice. Like, you came to me. We're going to do it my way.
Yeah.
And because I'm stubborn and I want my way,
Yeah.
you know? Um, and so, losing Jen was really this extremely pivotal moment in my life and in my recovery. And she taught me so much about love and compassion. She was one of the most compassionate people I've ever met, and I'm firmly convinced that a clean heroin addict is the best person you'll ever meet because they know pain like nobody ever will.
Yeah. There's a girl in my life that she's not in my life anymore. I think we had different definitions of sobriety at one point.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that caused a rift between us, but I was like, if you could just, there are just a few things that if you could just get a hold of this, like you're going to change the world. You're going to change the world.
Yeah.
And, and I hope she's doing well, but I mean, yeah, I think that's why, like, in certain spaces, you'll hear alcoholics, like, will say we're not a glum lot, and I think it's because we've seen so much heartbreak and so much pain and so much loneliness, and if we know that there's a solution, we just wanna see people live. We wanna see people win. We wanna like, I want people to know, especially in other circles of my life, like, I want you to know that you were created with a purpose, and if you're still alive today, that purpose has not been fulfilled. You need to keep on going. It's gonna get better. And it's an actually unbelievable truth for a while in our addiction.
It really is. And, for me, we'll jump back to, we've kind of come back to the part where we backtracked. And so, I know where to go now, and I feel like I have a heading, and I find a sponsor, who actually was my boss at the freight brokerage.
Oh, wow.
Um,
Small world.
and one of the coolest experiences, is when I left there, and went to go work as the office manager at a real estate office. I did not have nice things to say about them. And I'm sure the recovery community where you live is a lot like the recovery community here in Birmingham, and it's small and things get around. And if you're talking shit about somebody, they're going to hear it. And he had the integrity to pull me aside one day, at a meeting. This was when I was like coming back, trying to get sober. He didn't even realize I had relapsed. But he was like, "Hey man, I've heard some not great things about your experience working for us. And I just wanted to open up some space and give you the opportunity to express any of that to me, if you feel like you need to." And I was like, "Do you want me to punch list everything that like is wrong with your company?" And he was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "All right, boom, 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 boom." And he was like, "All of that's valid. Um, you know, we're not perfect. You know, I'm trained as a chef and he's trained running a restaurant, and we make mistakes as business owners, and everything you pointed out was a mistake due to our inexperience."
Yeah.
And that showed me a level of integrity I'd never seen before.
Yeah.
And it had a gravitational pull on me.
Sure.
I was drawn to him. And he and I have been on this journey for 3 years now. And that relationship is so beautiful because yes, it allowed me to get and stay sober. But we have developed as human beings together.
Right.
I mentioned he talks a lot about integrity earlier, and like my word means something today. And when
Yeah.
I say I'm going to do something, I do it. And for me to not do that, I can't live with myself, and I have to go make it right when I don't live up to my word.
Right.
Because for me, like that lack of integrity, that's the stuff I'll get high over.
Yeah. It's amazing the
Um,
transformation that we go through. And like we're not meant to do it alone. Like to your point,
no,
I don't think we're meant to do anything in life like completely solo. I think we're pack people, and for some of us, it's finding that pack, right? Like the way that we were raised, we're like, I thought this was my pack and this was what it's supposed to look like, and I judged myself based off of the girls that were getting married and had these like huge wedding parties and they all vacationed together. And I was like, I don't have that. So something's broken in me. I don't have my tribe. And then, it's a really ugly truth. But when I first got sober, the people that were my tribe, I was a little ashamed because it didn't look like what I thought it was supposed to look like. And
Wait, this is my tribe? I don't want this tribe.
yeah,
I
this
wanted
tribe is
that tribe.
full of like weirdos, crazies with these like random and now
It's
today, like
the
I love
island
the
of misfit
diversity.
toys.
Yeah, it is. And I love my tribe today because they all offer so many different perspectives. There's not a thing I've brought to the table where the whole group has been like, I don't know, man. There's usually somebody that's like, oh my gosh, when that happened to me, or so and so went through that. If you want to like reach out to them,
Well, and what's
and
crazy for me
it's-
is as a realtor, I'm in a position where I refer a lot of business to clients. It's a handyman, an electrician, a plumber, a painter. I have everything I need to refer from my recovery community.
yeah,
I have
isn't that cool?
every single profession I will ever need to refer because
Nope,
addiction does not discriminate. It
no,
does not know profession. It does not know industry. It it affects everybody equally, and everybody knows someone. And if you think you don't know somebody,
you do.
I got news for you.
You absolutely do. Yeah, and it doesn't care about what you think of yourself or what others think of you. Like yeah, I mean, it'll tear families apart, and it doesn't matter how good of a person you're trying to be. It's gnarly.
Exactly.
It really is.
I mean, I didn't want to have to go live in a different city from my kids. And I still don't live in the same city as my kids, you know? But I have a peace about that because they have an incredible mother and an amazing stepfather that is taking care of them. And I was told early on in recovery, and I really hope that, there is a dad out there that's not getting to see their kids right now that hears this. But God puts his kids, because they're not our kids. These are God's kids.
Yep.
We are all God's kids, and God puts his kids with the best babysitters. And
Yeah.
for me, they've got a great babysitter. They've got a wonderful mother who loves them and provides for them, and they have a great stepfather who's a wonderful role model. And the weirdest thing ever is that they are two of my best friends on this earth, and that would not be possible without sobriety and without this program. Um,
What
I,
an
I
amazing perspective. Thank you for sharing that.
I think we're coming up, but I do want to share one thing, especially about podcasts, and since we're on a podcast, there is one podcast that truly I think saved my relationship with my ex-wife, and saved and really gave me a lot of perspective early on in recovery. I was a big armchair expert guy.
Yep.
Dax Shepard is
Jack
like
Shepherd.
my sober hero. And Christmas of 2020, the original plan was for me to go pick up my boys at their mom's house and to go to my parents' lake house where we were going to spend the night together for the first time since I'd gone to treatment, just the three of us. And then the next day we were going to go on to my parents' house in Georgia. And she decided she wasn't comfortable with that, which she had every right to do at that point.
Right.
The day before, and I drove down there to pick up the boys and had pretty much every intention of blowing up on her, of telling her how unfair this was. And I put on that day 7 episode. I'm sure you've heard that one, where Dax talks about his relapse. And then I listened to their Christmas special that year, and it completely changed my mood. And so like it allowed me to show up the way I was supposed to and not go down there and just ruin Christmas like I was going to.
Yeah.
And so like it's so cool full circle to be on a podcast now, and getting to share that with you. And this is such a great experience, and it's really incredible to see how well you're doing, Whitney.
Yeah, it's incredible to see how well you're doing. I mean, we're doing it together, right? And that's the point of this podcast. It's one conversation at a time. And for me, like I work in the supply chain. I worked at a brokerage, free brokerage for years. Like we gather in places, but it's it's also changing the stigma in our circles, right? Like in the professional world, in our homes, in the certain societies that we live in, where it's like our addiction, our past shouldn't have to define our future, and there are ways to combat the lies that we hear along the way with some truth. And I'm hoping that like your story and the other stories that we hear on this show are proof of that. Your past and your experience, it's not defining who you are today. It's shaped you, but it's not the definition. If I say, tell me about yourself, that wasn't what came up. And I love
Yeah.
that. I love that you've accepted that.
Yeah. And it's, I spent a long time with that, I hate the term, but they call it junkie pride. That like the first thing I told you about me, oh, I'm in recovery. Oh, I'm in recovery.
Yeah.
And I'm at a point now in my life where it's a part of my story, but it doesn't define it.
Yeah. It's not the whole story. You're so much more than that. So for anybody that's listening, that is the truth. And then if your story resonates with somebody, what's the best way for them to reach out to you? Maybe they do want to continue the conversation offline.
Yeah, so I'm on all social media, Mike Foxhall on Facebook, Mike Foxhall Realtor on one word on Instagram. You can reach out to me by heck, you can call me. My phone number is 251-421-5271. Like, I don't care. I'm an open book. If you'd like to reach out, I'm always happy to have a conversation. And if something really struck you, I would really love to hear it.
Yeah. Well, Mike, it has been fantastic catching up with you. Thank you again for coming on the show.
Absolutely. Sounds great. Thank you, Whitney.
And to everybody else, we'll see you next week.